Also interesting is the news that came out since you and I sat down. Something you and I and, well, everyone else in wrestling thought was tabled and shelved a long time ago. A Vince McMahon documentary is coming out on Netflix later this month. I can't believe this is real. We're like 3 weeks away from a 6-part series on Netflix. I think they're an hour long and it's 6 episodes. This is the executive producers who put together Tiger King, which took over at the start of the pandemic. And of course, Bill Simmons, who we've all seen some of his great work for 30 for 30 that he's done for ESPN. And it's subtitled Mr. McMahon, Mastermind, Madman. Allegedly, they did over 200 hours worth of interviews for this. I mean, they not only interviewed Vince, but they interviewed his family, his close friends, people he's worked with. And I don't know how much of a show this is going to be about just WWE. It's probably primarily focused on Vince McMahon, but you can't tell the Vince story without talking about some WWE. And there's a lot of people. Well, I do think they'll probably get into like his family history, like his just real life growing up and his family relationships and things like that. I assume all of that will be covered. But a lot of people are wondering and speculating, what is this going to look like? Because WWE is now partnering with Netflix and they're not going to let so and so say such and such about their company. But this is not something they have editorial control over. And as I understand it, even Vince McMahon did not have editorial control. I don't know if this is going to be an absolute burial of WWE, but from what I understand, it is not very positive about Vince McMahon. I don't know what to expect here, but I can't wait to see it. What say you?
Conrad, I'll tell you a little story. What day did this broke? It's irrelevant, but I was doing cardio. I feel like, yes. But anyway, when I looked at my phone, I literally scrolled and pulled up your number. And for whatever reason, I either thought he's doing a pod, maybe just the timing went right. And I said, man, oh man, this is longer than a 2 or 3 minute conversation. Because Connie, I got a lot of questions for you that maybe you can or can't answer. I'm just saying, as far as recalling, nothing off color, off mark here. First question was, when the original idea came up for this and they started filming, Vince was still the chairman, correct?
Yeah, Vince was the big boss when this all started.
When it all started. And so going into it with them, and another thing that I found interesting is that, and maybe it's very telling, I was, like a lot of us, shut in during pandemic or all that, and I watched old Tiger King, and obviously a train wreck and everything. I find it interesting that is literally on all the copy from the executive producer of Tiger King. So is that like a comparative? Is it like, hey, we did Halloween and Friday the 13th, so come watch this horror flick? Is it branding it out of the gate? I don't know.
Here's what I think it is. I think, can we agree that Tiger King was the number one streaming show or concept or program? Yeah. So I'm just saying, I think they're making sure that you understand. Because, I mean, let's be honest. In 2019, if you pulled me or you aside and said, hey, man, they're doing this documentary series on this crazy guy who's got like big cats. And there's this other crazy lady, and she doesn't want him to have the big cats, and he doesn't want her to have the big cats. And anyway, it's a documentary about these crazy people who like big tigers and lions and things like that. Are you interested? I think you and I would have said, no, I'd rather go cut the grass than watch that.
Well, there's murder involved.
But the point is, I think we all were forced into, well, everybody's talking about it, I'll try it. And we started it and we were like, holy cow, I'm all in. This is fascinating. I don't know why I can't stop watching this. I think they're putting that Tiger King copy on there to make sure that non-wrestling fans who would normally say, I don't give a rip about Vince McMahon. He was a terrible person. And man, that WWE stuff, that's fake fighting. That's for kids. I'm not watching it. I said when my kids left the house, I'd never have that garbage on my TV again. I think they're saying Tiger King to say, hey, as a reminder, you didn't think you'd be interested in watching a tiger documentary either, but we got you. Like I think they're trying to swing and make this a more mainstream opportunity.
Yep. And Bill Simmons, sports junkie. I
Yeah.
mean, he's so branded in the sports world, which is another kind of fascinating, but he knows his wrestling as well. But I'm going back to the original thing. So they started it when he was the chairman and started all these interviews. Man, I think at the end of the day, like any doc or anything like this, how many edits have they been through? What is left on the director's table? What made it and didn't make it? Obviously, Netflix is in the business of creating as many streams as possible. End of the day, that's exactly what they signed up to be. So, oh boy.
Well, let me give you a spoiler too. They didn't just interview WWE people; they interviewed outsiders.
You got any names?
I'm not going to say any names because I don't know who wound up on the cutting room floor.
Okay.
But third party people who cover the business. I'll just say that.
Okay.
So people who don't work for WWE but cover the industry and might appear in talking heads and other non WWE projects, but almost never a WWE project. Those people were interviewed here. So it's not like,
well,
this is not a whitewash story of Vince McMahon. Or I don't know what the final version is, but I know that some friends of ours, some people you and I know, they had a chance to screen an episode or two of this at this point, well over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And it was not positive. It was not well received. It was very negative.
Okay. So, like the thing that, and through the years, and I'm not just saying the doc, I'm talking about like going through the years, Conrad, just, I'll call it, because the business of professional wrestling, you got to deal with networks, you got to deal with venues, you got to deal with licensees, you've got to deal with certain management of other celebrities. So you got to deal in the agency world. There's different, you just can't operate in a silo internally. And Vince, the face of professional wrestling, literally since mid 80s, in so many ways, I've heard the stories, and I don't want to say good or bad, just the real life on how he did business, the shrewdness, the leverage. Some folks would say, man, that was a brilliant move. Other folks would say, man, he boxed those guys in a corner, or just all that kind of stuff. I'm curious to see if they, whether it's somebody from the Garden or maybe through the years, somebody at NBC, because when you get right down to the negotiations of the big deals, and look, Nick Khan's in that seat right now. Business is not always fun and it's not always easy. There is a underbelly to it all. So how do they represent the building of the WWE from literally, a territory business to a global business? I'm curious to see all that, even how much they touch on it. I don't know. Yeah, I think, Conrad, how do you think it's going to be? You think it's going to be successful on a streaming, it'll
be a home run. It'll be the talk of Netflix for a bit. It'll be in their top 10 most watched. People are this will be on sports talk radio. It'll become a pop culture thing again. It's going to be a real shot in the arm for WWE, and everybody's going to be talking about Vince McMahon. When I say shot in the arm, I mean people are going to be talking about it in a way that maybe folks who don't normally talk about professional wrestling in WWE are going to be talking about it. And at this point, from all intents and purposes, Vince is on the outside looking in. He is, as crazy of a sentence as this sounds to even say, Vince McMahon is not involved with the WWE at all. So they can now distance themselves. So any bad behavior that's covered, anything that's controversial that's said about him being a ruthless, cutthroat businessman who left people out in the cold or screwed people over. I mean, whatever Brett used to say about, he used to treat us like we were circus animals and he'd take us out back and put one in our head or whatever the deal is. They can say whatever they want now, and WWE can say, well, that was then, this is now, he gone, and everything's okay. So, and here's the other thing. It's not like the deal with Netflix is in jeopardy. It's already signed, sealed, delivered. Like, it's coming. And I just think that this will be the first time we've been able to see a Vince McMahon story that hasn't been whitewashed. And it'll be interesting to see what's in. But what I'm more fascinated by, without even seeing the 6 hours they choose to air, is the near 200 hours that did not air. Like, can you imagine all that stuff? Like, they could continue to roll out B-roll and follow-ups and little bonuses as that stuff drips out, the things that wound up on the cutting room floor. Because you want to talk about an unenviable task. Jeff, how do you take 200 hours and whittle it down to 6?
I mean, like that. So, which leads me to another thought that I've had when I was on the elliptical, and I was going to call you in that. Okay, they've had it, because I thought it went back years. They've had this in the can. I don't believe in coincidences, only convergences. That's why I'm very interesting to think that this drops at the end of September. So you have a run of October and November. And oh, hello, folks. Professional wrestling comes to Netflix in January. By design, they've held it, I believe. And
Well, I don't think there's any doubt of that. I mean, I think, they probably know there's a lull right here. And this is when football starts to really heat up. Like, there's a lot of reasons for them to release it right now. It's going to be interesting. I mean, if I saw Brian Alvarez say he didn't think it would be soft, like whitewashed, and there's nothing there, but he also didn't think it would be, a complete burial and just a disaster. He thought it would be somewhere in the middle as far as how truthful and honest it was. But, it's weird because whether we're talking wrestling or we're talking politics or sports, the truth is, and always has been, somewhere in the middle. I have my opinion. You have your opinion.
sure.
The way you interpreted something to be true could be different than I, and it's probably really somewhere in the middle, but it's going to be interesting to see what this looks like over the next few weeks.
At the end of the day, too, Conrad, because some, the people, the emotional, and you can believe a little bit of another story and a little bit of this. Everybody, I'll say this with complete respect, out of any and everything taken in. Most people believe, just like in politics, they believe what they want to believe. It's just that simple. But if you take it back to almost to square one, there's no question that Vince McMahon's life story is incredibly fascinating. And just, I'm as a kid in Carolina growing up to running a global business, there is so much more than 6 hours, and it's going to be interesting to see the product they put out. That, it's wow. I don't know. I'll be tuning in, that's for sure.